why is it that you feel you can't work for someone? Or why is it that you feel that since you can't work for someone, that you have the entrepreneurial ability to build a business, operate a business, grow a business, and earn a living for you and your family from that business?
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Perfectly Mentored. I'm your host, Jason Portnoy. My guest on this episode is Mitch Garber. He is a fellow Montrealer, but also a Canadian lawyer. He is the former founder and CEO of Optimal Payments, which then got sold to Paysafe, which is listed on the NASDAQ, CEO of PartyGaming, Caesar's acquisition company. He is also now the co-owner of the Seattle Kraken, the NHL's newest franchise. A brilliant, brilliant mind. He was also a dragon on the French version of Dragon's Den, which is like Shark Tank. So perfect person in terms of success to help come on and give tactical advice and share his experience on how to navigate the business landscape. And just an amazing conversation. Super, super smart guy. You're not going to want to miss this one. Check it out. Mitch, welcome to the show.
Thank you, fellow Montrealer. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I'm happy we were able to make this work. I know you're traveling a lot, so I appreciate you spending some time with me here.
Yeah, I spent enough time not traveling a lot, and I have to say I didn't miss traveling, but now I'm back to traveling. Spend a lot of time in Seattle, and but this is a pleasure to do.
Thank you. We'll talk about Seattle. I promise. I got some questions about that. But for the listeners who may not be familiar with you or your story, and it's an incredible one, especially for entrepreneurs to pay attention to and listen to, why don't you give us a little bit of a quick story on your journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'm 57 years old, so it's a bit of a long journey because I started delivering newspapers when I was about 11, and people may or may not, or 12, people may not view that as being a business-minded venture. But when you think about the responsibility of having to wake up at 5 a.m, when you're 12 years old and deliver papers, it does create a sort of work ethic. And when you have to go collect the money from each and every one of the people who you deliver the newspaper to, and when they're not home, go back the next day and back the next day, it's really a microcosm of what the world's going to be like when you're working for real money. When I was 14, I took over the snack canteen at a municipal swimming pool, and I actually owned the equipment and bought all the food. My mother had to sign for me at the bank. So I ran a business where I was making about $3,000 a summer, and that's back in the 70s, where that was like a lot of money. So I had this entrepreneurial spirit about me, but I sort of left entrepreneurship because it was very important for my parents that I got an education, a real sort of advanced education. So I got my BA at McGill, and I got my law degree at the University of Ottawa, and I practiced law for 9 years. So, but business was always inside me. And when I found an opportunity to join a couple of friends at building a business, which we did, we built a payment processing business, and it became public, and we did very well. I did that. And so after the 9 years of practicing law, the rest of my career has been running companies, not necessarily building companies, not what would be considered conventional entrepreneurship, meaning out of my garage, come up with an idea, build something from scratch. I didn't do that. I've owned about 5% of all the companies that I've run, and that's been good for me. I've been in some big companies, in Europe at PartyGaming, building a big subsidiary of Caesar's in Las Vegas, building a big Israeli mobile games company and selling it. So, my career has been one of early entrepreneurship, education, and then seizing opportunity in businesses and becoming a business operator, a senior executive, where I think that's where my path took me.
I love that you talked about seizing opportunities, and that's actually one of the questions I want to talk to you about. But before, you started with Seattle, and I as a sports fan, you're a sports fan. I want to start here. I know you're a big sports fan, and you're now co-owner of the Seattle Kraken. Was it always a dream of yours to own a professional sports team? Because I feel like that's in business, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs listening. I feel like that's the ultimate "I made it" symbol, right? Like, I feel like forget owning a plane, owning a sports team, I feel like is like a huge accomplishment.
I'm going to have to tell you that it never really occurred to me for a couple of reasons. Number one, I never thought I'd be in a position to be able to afford to do it. So I didn't really dream it. Number two, to have the opportunity presented to you. I know that Gary Vaynerchuk. So Gary V has as his number one goal, I believe, to own the New York Jets. And that's a stated goal. And he's a diehard Jets fan. So, for me, it was opportunistic. of course, I'm a big sports fan, and I've had some financial success, and I've been tied to David Bonderman for the last 13 years. And so he and Jerry Bruckheimer worked for 12 years to get a sports franchise, to get a hockey franchise. They were working on relocating a franchise, buying the Pittsburgh Penguins at some stage, until finally they convinced the NHL and the city of Seattle that this was the best fit. And it's turned out to be obviously an amazing idea that's come to fruition. So, when David Bonderman asked me if I wanted to join his ownership group, I jumped at the opportunity. And so speaking of opportunism, that was one of the best examples of being opportunistic.
And what are some, going through all that, starting a new team in a new market? It's not like you brought a team back, right? Like it's pretty much starting from scratch. What business lessons that you maybe didn't know before this did now come to fruition?
You know what? The biggest business lesson that I learned here, I did know before, which is the quality of the team that you build to build the business, run the business, and operate the business is going to be the main determinant of the success or failure of the business. So David Bonderman, he hired Todd Leiweke. He engaged in a partnership with Todd's brother, Tim Leiweke, to build the Climate Pledge Arena. He engaged Andy Jassy, the now CEO of Amazon, David Wright, Adrian Hanauer, the Ackerley brothers, Jay Deutsch, Len Potter. He engaged all the right people, and then hired Victor DeBonis, who worked for 23 years for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm naming the people because that's who makes all of the business run. You can't build a $1.3 billion arena without the best team in the world. We'll talk about the on ice team. That's the last piece of the puzzle. There's so many pieces before that. There's the brand and logo. There's the building. There's hiring Ron Francis. There's Ron Francis hiring the coaching staff and the scouting staff, the business analytics staff. So I really think the lesson is great people, and the Leiweke brothers are the best people to be running this business and the arena.
And that's fascinating because we're living in a time where people are outsourcing, right? So let's bring it down to the micro. People who are maybe just starting their business or running like a small seven-figure business, not $1 billion sports franchise, but everyone's now talking about outsource. And sometimes when you're running a business, outsourcing, there's a difference between like outsourcing and abdicating your responsibility as a business owner. And you're talking about building a team, which everyone's talking about, oh, just outsource. And then I'm from the philosophy, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm open to that. Is I'll overpay for my talent. I want the best possible A team in my business. And people have looked at what I pay certain people, and they're like, you could get it for cheaper. And I said, I can, but I can't get this talent.
Yeah, we don't know each other, but we share the exact same philosophy. Number one, you cannot outsource vision, passion, and execution. Those are the three things you need in a business. You can outsource tasks, you can outsource development, you can outsource support. There are a lot of things you can outsource, but you can't outsource, vision, passion, and execution. That's number one. Number two, I'm always prepared to overpay within reason. So, let's say for argument's sake, I'm buying a company like Playtika, okay, and I paid $100 million for it. And at the end of the day, they wanted $110 million. This is a true story, right? Now, we were in that to make 5 to 10x on our investment. We turned out to make 40x on it, but we were in it to make 5 to 10x on the investment. So if I pay 100 or 110 and I make the seller happy, and the seller and his executive management team are going to stay with us through the next growth phase, then what is the actual incremental cost? It's actually not a cost. The cost would have been to pay the 100 million and have them be resentful and have them be unhappy and unfulfilled. So I'd rather overpay. I think the same thing goes for top executives. Now, if you're talking about overpaying top executives, you can easily overpay them, or not overpay them, but pay them their value in incentive pay, right? So base is one thing. Equity, bonus is really where the money is earned. Very few people get wealthy on base. They get wealthy if they seek to get wealthy. They get wealthy on bonus and equity. And bonus and equity are paid only on success. No one pays bonuses for failure, and equity doesn't increase in value if you're failing in business. So I think you can align yourself with the people around you, and you can remunerate them what might be above market, but for your business, it's real value.
You were one of the dragons on the French version of Dragon's Den. What was that experience like? Because I think you really got to meet with a lot of entrepreneurs who come in with either silly ideas or fantastic ideas. They either know business or have no or they have no concept of their numbers. What was that experience like for you?
I did it for reasons that most people may not guess. I really wanted to become part of the French media, French business side of Quebec, and I was able to do that. And then second of all, I wanted to be seen more as an advisor than an investor. I didn't expect to make money, and I didn't make money. I expected to be able to give real advice. I didn't want to be a smartass. I didn't want to be arrogant. I didn't want to make people feel badly. I wasn't looking to become more well-known. I was looking to be able to give sage advice after having seen a lot of success and a lot of failure. And some of the most, I would say, wise advice that I was able to give was to tell people to stop investing in their business, that they were going down, a rabbit hole and it wasn't going to end well. And that's really good advice, right? If you just borrowed money from your parents or your uncles and aunts or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whomever, and you've mortgaged your house for this business because it's your dream, just because it's your dream doesn't mean that it's going to come true. And there's a point where you need to make that decision. Am I dreaming, or is this going to happen? And many people, I would say most people, have a real hard time with the timing of making that decision because you want so badly for it to be successful. So someone like me comes along and said, I think you should rethink this business, or rethink this business plan, or rethink any further investment that's going to put you into more debt. And I made that recommendation a lot of times, and I feel good about it because I think that, as heartbreaking as it might be, it's good advice.
So, and that's fascinating because we're taught patience. We're taught quitting. It's not a failure until you quit. At what point? So I guess for the entrepreneurs listening, and they're like, okay, fine. We're taught patience. We're taught all this. And I asked Gary the same question: at what point does patience become delusion? Because now you're advising people on stopping their business on Dragon's Den. How do you come up with that time frame?
First of all, let me tell you that I learn a lot from Gary. I watch all of his TikToks. I'm 57 years old, and I listen to Gary, and I listen to the way he communicates his thoughts about life and business. And I admire him, and I find truth in many things that he says, and I learn from him. So that's number one. Number two, I talk to young and old entrepreneurs about really one thing: milestones. Set milestones. You can change them, but set them. We need to be at $1 million of annual recurrent revenue within a year from now. Okay, well, a year comes. You're at 100,000. Why are you off by 90%? Is it because your timing was off and you're hitting and it's going to be okay? Or is it because you were wrong and you're not going to get there? Is it because that your milestone was the wrong number, that you should never have thought you would get there, that 500 is the right number? I just think that making yourself accountable, let's say you're an aspiring actor or actress, right? And you're 18 years old. Now you can go through your entire life going to, read scripts and going to auditions. And for some people you should, because the dream can always come true. But some people need to set milestones. Like, if I haven't gotten my first commercial by the time I'm 30, maybe I should consider something else. By the time I'm 40. So I just believe in setting yourself these milestones, or else you end up on a treadmill and you really don't realize how far you've gone, or how far you haven't gone, how you've been running in place and you haven't actually, gained any distance.
Watching shows like Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, and seeing the rise of of social media, the entrepreneurs come in. You're a lawyer who then went to business. I rejected law school, made my mother cry, said I was going to start a t-shirt company, made her cry even more. Do you think, and that was almost 15 years ago. Do you think right now entrepreneurship's being romanticized too much? That now it's become glory and people think, wow, okay, it's that easy. I go watch Shark Tank. I go watch Dragon's Den. I listen to what Mitch just said to this person. I go apply it to my business. Now I'm a business person.
I don't think it's Shark Tank. I think it's a combination of social media. The same way that Instagram will maybe fat shame people and make sort of this skinny model look become the aspiration. And so every single, I'm using women as an example, but every woman looks perfect, but we all know that every woman or every man aren't perfect. That's not a reflection of the real world, but it becomes the reflection of the real world. And now you have these young people thinking they have to look like that or be like that. Well, these valuations that we're seeing today are maybe romanticizing how easy it is to get a unicorn. All of a sudden, now there's hundreds of new unicorns every year. Billions and trillions of dollars in venture capital being deployed. Crypto goes from $10 to $69,000 on Bitcoin, right? Or Coinbase goes from a 2 billion valuation to 100 billion, back to 80 billion. These numbers are real, but for a very, 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 very small number of companies and a very, very, very small number of individuals who got to benefit from them. But it doesn't seem that way. It just seems like everyone's making money from crypto. Well, it's not true, right? I know lots and lots and lots of people, and very few of them have made a fortune on crypto. But the perception is making people feel that millions is the norm, billions is the norm, seed rounds at 100 million valuation is the norm. It's not the norm, but that's what you're seeing on, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or wherever you're getting your information from. So you need to realize it's still as hard to build a business that has recurrent revenue and profit margin and getting customers to want to buy your product or service as it used to be. There's more ways to do it. The platforms have allowed you to be a much more global creative entrepreneur, but it's still very, very hard.
Watching or being a judge, I guess, or a dragon on Dragon's Den, do you see that there's a lot of people who should never be business owners? Like, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, because there's times that I wish I was wired differently. There are times I wish I could go, I could go get a 9 to 5. And I know that's not entrepreneurial to say, and that goes against the norm, but there are times when my brain just doesn't shut off, where I go to bed and I think about the business. I wake up, I think about the business. I'm with my kids, something bad happens, I end up thinking about the business. There's something nice about going to do a 9 to 5. You check out on the weekend. It's your boss's problem. I'm having my weekend off and I come back and I pick up.
For sure. I mean, I think the biggest challenge for people like me who run companies is to find, we're always searching for that perfect kind of perfect employee, which is someone who goes to bed thinking about the business and wakes up thinking about the business. And of course, has some balance in their life with family and recreation and travel, etc. And so what we don't usually want is the punching 9 to 5, but there are really good punching 9 to 5 jobs. And there are people that are perfectly suited for punching 9 to 5 jobs. I think the idea is all about self-awareness. Why is it that you feel you can't work for someone? Why is it that you feel that since you can't work for someone, that you have the entrepreneurial ability to build a business, operate a business, grow a business, and earn a living for you and your family from that business? So there's a lot of elements that go into who you are and knowing who you are. So you do have a lot of failed entrepreneurs who convince themselves that they shouldn't be working for someone. And if I look at my career, I have always been working for someone, and I'm proud of it. Whether it was the board of directors, whether it was the chairman of the board, whether it was the shareholders, whomever it was, I was working for them. I always felt that I was working for the shareholders. I was working to be able to convey a story to the analysts. I was working to execute a business plan that I had put before the board of directors and that they had approved. I was working for someone so that I could meet the numbers that were in the budget and hopefully exceed the revenue and hopefully increase the margin in the business. So I was always working for somebody. And as long as you're working for somebody that you can work for, or some group of people that you can work for, I've never obviously found anything about working for people that was beneath me. I have met a number of people who are either, it's not beneath them, they're wired that they need to work on their own, that's fine. But I have met people who think it's beneath them to work for someone. And those are the people that I try to convince that that should not be the case.
You've grown a lot of businesses. You've invested a lot. I think one area that's not talked enough about when it comes to growing businesses is the principle of compounding, right? So we get it from an investment point of view, but usually entrepreneurs, they want to go all in on one thing, or they chase the latest hack strategy, get rich quick type of approach. But if they just focus on the core like areas of their business and got incrementally better, like 10% better in each one of those areas, it would have a compounding effect to monumental, like huge growth. How important has that principle of compounding been for you when growing a business?
Yeah, I think, I got wealthy slowly. So, there are two ways to do it. You get a hit, you get a home run, grand slam home run. Many people have gotten one. Mark Cuban got a grand slam home run, and from there he's been able to parlay that into a lot of incredible things. Elon Musk, as another example, he did okay. Then he sold to PayPal. Then he did well. If you look at where he's at today, he made like 100 million maybe or less at PayPal. And then he parlayed that. So, I think that if you're in a business, focus is the most important thing, and focusing at what you're good at is even more important than that. So get rich quick is not a business model. Get rich quick is an outcome. You got rich quick. I don't believe you could plan it. I don't believe you can say, okay, listen, I'm starting a business, I'm going to get rich quick. You could say it, but you can't plan it. So all the people that were in get rich quick schemes, they actually got rich quick. All the people who have been very successful have probably not known how it was going to turn out, and they made a lot of right decisions and some wrong decisions, and that's part of the journey. So, I think it's all about focus and decision making, and being able to pivot when you need to, and change your mind when you need to, and change strategy when you need to. It's not easy, and for some people it's easy, but for the great, for the mass number of us, it's not simple.
You just talked about pivoting, and you've made a lot of pivots in your career. I don't know if pivot is the right word for it, but we've talked about this in the beginning. You're very good at recognizing opportunities and going after them. So I'd love to, if I can, jump inside your brain and understand how you look at offers and how you think about opportunities and decide to act, because you must see a ton of opportunities. And maybe that's the benefit of being in a position you're in right now, is that you just get so many opportunities thrown your way that it's easier to choose from. But in your earlier days, I'd love if you could bring us back and being like, okay, how to recognize, because when's the right time to jump? When's the right time to be like, oh, that's an opportunity, I got to go after it? What do you look for?
Yeah, I look for much different things today than I used to look for, because today I have the luxury of being able to interview many management teams in many different businesses and recognize a real talented group who have a real special offering that has a real addressable market. And so therefore they are very likely to succeed.
So sorry to interrupt, because I think that's important. What does that look like? What are those signs to you?
It's interesting you asked that question, because, I don't know if you can identify with this, but, you meet somebody, okay? And you may be wrong, but in the first 5 minutes of meeting someone, if that's your type of guy or not. If that's someone that you'd like to hang around with or not. Now, you might be wrong, because first impressions can be wrong, but you might be wrong. I feel like I have an innate ability to recognize a talented founder or a talented manager who has a product or an idea that's likely to be successful, and that they are the likely people that will succeed if they are financed properly and backed properly and introduced to the right people properly. I feel like I can do that and have a good batting average without having to have a score sheet in front of me where I check boxes. I think today, my area where I feel most comfortable is if you're going to be selling your product or service on the internet, if you're going to be selling it to a global audience, if the friction to buy it and to recurrently buy it is very, very low. And then of course, get into the talent of the founders, the management, and the team that's going to execute it. So that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like for me. Back in the day, it was still about people, but back in the day, there was some luck attached to it. Meaning, how old was I in 1999? I was I was in my 30s, right? And I left my law practice. My wife was a lawyer. She is a lawyer still. We had double income. We had a 4-year-old child at the time. I could have afforded to lose everything. I could have afforded for this idea of leaving the practice and trying to build this company Surefire. Let's just say it went to zero. I'll go back to practicing law. The kind of risk I wouldn't take if I was in that financial position, but at 55 years old. So trying to pick the right spot to take the risk at the right time is also something that comes naturally to people. And sometimes you're wrong. And so when you say pivot, pivot also means bail. Jump on another ship, right? There's lots of ships. You just got to give yourself an opportunity to not be, too overly committed to something that's not working.
And I feel like that's a big mistake for business owners right now, where I always hear that business is your baby. It's your baby. This is my baby. It's my baby. I've never been tied to any of my businesses maybe as a baby. I have 2 kids. I say this all the time. With 2 kids, I wouldn't sell them for any amount of money. Some days, maybe there is a price point that you could take them, but most days, there's no chance. So I'm not emotionally attached. It's a means of an end. It's a means to something, right? I'm doing it to provide for my family. I'm doing it to help people. If I could get on the next ship that's going to take me a little bit further, I feel like I'm stupid to stay attached to this. Is that something that you see a lot, that people are too emotionally attached to their businesses?
It goes back to what I was talking about Dragon's Den earlier. That's what leads founders to stay too long with a bad idea, is that they're afraid to acknowledge the failure because it's their baby. Not every baby turns into Facebook or Tesla or SpaceX or Amazon.
Are they afraid to acknowledge their failures because it's their baby, or are people just more afraid of what outsiders are going to think? Like, oh, didn't you start that company? Like, what happened?
Everyone hates failure. Everyone hates failure. People used to say to me, "What'd you get on the exam?" And I got 57. No one wants to say I got 57, right? Oh, I got 87. Great. I got 57.
See, I didn't care. And that's why I wasn't cut out for school, but I didn't care. But what I did care was the reaction of other people. And I'm very self-aware of that. Like, I care about that. Like, when I left my clothing company, part of it was like, what are other people going to think? And at some point it was like, I got to do what makes me happy, and I got to make the best decisions for me and not worry what other people are saying. But I feel a lot of people hold on to it because they can't face someone being like, "Hey, Mitch, weren't you in that company? What happened? I guess you failed."
Yeah, I think, look, self-confidence is a really difficult thing for some people to attain. And it took me a long time to become self-confident. I was the shortest kid in school, and I didn't do well necessarily in class. I was popular. I was athletic. It didn't hurt, but I had my insecurities, and I wasn't, bubbling over with confidence. When I went to CEGEP, when I went to McGill, I wasn't bubbling over with confidence. So it does take time for people to be able to accept that, failure is part of the journey. And if you've never failed, maybe you've either been extraordinarily lucky, or you haven't taken quite as much risk as you say you have. A lot of people use the term, especially on LinkedIn, serial entrepreneur. And I don't know what that means. I think Elon Musk is a serial entrepreneur. I think that term should be reserved for people that have been serially entrepreneurially successful. So I do think that, people are much more likely to acknowledge their failure once they're already in a success, meaning, oh, you know what? I started a startup, I failed. I started another one, I failed. And now I'm in this. No one wants to be in the middle of a bunch of failures, right? I'm in a startup, but weren't you in a startup before? Yeah, it didn't work out. What about the other one? Yeah, it also didn't work out. It's normal that, we're made to not, want to fail, but perseverance and resilience are very important characteristics in successful people.
And that ties back, I think, a little bit to the social media world we live in, right? Where it creates major imposter syndrome. So one is, you're looking at people as being like, how can I talk? I don't think I've accomplished as much as Mitch has. So how can I give business advice when there's guys like you out there giving business advice? And then there are guys posting that, hey, look, I just scored this. And then you start comparing yourself. I think comparison and imposter syndrome, I think imposter syndrome is normal for entrepreneurs. And I think it has to be normalized a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it has to be talked about a little bit more, but I feel like that and comparison are the two major killers in entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Also, also you're talking about social media. So if you take a look at LinkedIn as an example, it's an amazing, amazing platform. One of the best that I've seen. But what it does is it encourages an imposter type bio, because you have this 2-paragraph opportunity to describe yourself as being great. No one goes on LinkedIn to describe themselves as being, hi, I'm a below average, not very hardworking, 48-year-old male looking for a job. That's not a very good bio, right? So, and younger people today who are competing for internships and competing for jobs at a pace that I've never seen it before, at least not when I was younger. Their LinkedIn profiles for experienced readers of bios are a bit of a joke, but it's not really a joke, because they are kind of forced into this fakery, where if I don't look like I've worked at 3 hospitals, speak 4 languages, and taking a cooking course in India, I'm not going to stand out. I'm going to be what I call the copy paste. And I've seen so many copy pastes, right? I went to university, got my undergrad, did 2 years of work at a bank, and then I went to MBA school, and now I'm applying here for a job, right? So, okay, I've got 1,000 of you. So now, how are you going to stand out among those thousands? So I do think that, this, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome, but there's a pressure that's creating an illusory sort of backdrop of who they really are. And so we need to meet them, and we need to talk to them and see what they're really like, so we can see what they're going to be like in the real world, where they're going to talk to real people. It's not going to be a posting on LinkedIn.
I think it's safe to call you a wildly successful man here. So let's look at that for the listeners who just heard what you have to say, and they're sitting there saying, well, all right, let's say I want to get on Mitch's radar, right?
Yeah.
So, how do I stand out? What's your advice for those people?
I find that the best way to stand out, I tell this to a lot of people, is to try. Number one, authenticity. And Gary Vee talks about his authenticity, and I think he is authentic. I think he's transparent and et cetera. I hope I am too. But so the people who look like they're trying to stand out, they stand out in the wrong way. They wait for you in the hall, and they come and make their pitch, and their pitch is kind of prefabbed and not authentic. And those are the people that I cast aside much more easily than someone who has a much more natural approach and enters a much more natural discussion, who, it seems at least, doesn't have a motive and expectation of how this interaction is going to end. That doesn't sound like advice that's clear, but all of this planned kind of unauthentic approach, I think it turns off more people than it turns on. So saying to someone, be authentic, they may say, well, what does that mean? Well, it means try to act naturally, as if you're meeting someone that you don't hold in this super high esteem, that you're not thinking that I have 30 seconds to impress this person. The person might be impressed if you know a little bit about them, and you say, hey, I saw a podcast with you, and I read that same book, and I thought it was great too. Just wanted to tell you that, something like that. I've been a big hockey fan my whole life. That's my dream. Just wanted to say, hey, congratulations on that. That's great. And that's a conversation. Not, I've always wanted to work for a hockey team. How can I send you my bio to work for the Kraken? Yeah, well, there's 50,000 people who want to work for the Kraken. I understand, and I understand the dream, but that's probably not the way to get there.
Proximity in life matters, especially if you're trying to grow a business, right? So being in the right room with the right people, I think, is super important to success. How do people get in your room?
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer. It's a really tough one to answer. People ask me, things like this all the time, like, oh, what's your secret? And my secret is that you will never live exactly my life. You need to find a path that works in your life. I'm going to give you an example. Some people might say to me, oh, you speak without any, you don't seem very nervous, even if you're speaking in front of 10,000 people. And I say, well, I did a radio show back in 1991 for 3 hours, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. on a local cultural radio station that I bought the time on and sold sponsorship on. And for the first months of that radio show, I got no calls, which means, and there was no internet, which means I spoke for 3 hours without stopping, without a guest, without anyone else to talk to. I was forced into being able to talk for 3 hours without anyone to talk to. Now, can you replicate that? No, but you may do something else that makes you equally at ease speaking to people in front of people. So to get into my room, I think that I've gotten into most rooms that I've gotten into by not planning to be there. And I know that's, again, I don't like to make up advice, but I might sit next to someone on an airplane and see a sticker on their laptop and ask them, oh, you work for Oracle. Yeah, and the person turns out to be the CFO of Oracle. And you end up with this conversation. And I'd say that many of the people that I've met along the way, I've met them not on purpose. So, but that having been said, and this is probably my best advice story, which is back in 2003, I was invited to a dinner for future Prime Minister Paul Martin at the upstairs lounge of a restaurant. Now in 2003, I didn't have a really nice suit and I didn't have anyone to go with. And I wasn't invited with my wife. And it was a Sunday night. So I said to my wife, I'm not going. I don't want to go. And she said, you have to go. You don't know who you're going to meet there. I said, yeah, but you know what? I'm going alone. I don't feel like I look the part. I'm not that into it. She said, go. Sunday night, you have nothing to do. You're going to sit home. Now, I went to that dinner. I sat at a table next to someone I didn't know. And that person was the chairman of a public company that ended up buying the company that I was the then CEO of. And that company turned into Optimal, which turned out to be a big NASDAQ success, which today is Paysafe. And I ended up being offered the CEO job at PartyGaming in England, in Gibraltar. And I moved there. And I ended up meeting the founders of Apollo and TPG, who asked me if I wanted to start a subsidiary of Caesars, which I did. And I moved back to Canada. My point is, I went to the dinner. If you stay home, you're not sitting next to the guy that might buy your company. If you're afraid that you don't fit in, you're not going to meet that person that you would meet otherwise. If you're afraid that your tie is not nice enough, so what? Go. So that is one piece of advice, is go. Be there. Be everywhere. All right? Just don't make it so obvious that you're trying so hard. Holding the bat too tight in baseball and holding your club too tight in golf. You can do it in life too. So I would just say, be yourself and try to develop confidence, and don't feel out of place. No one's judging you. You're judging you. The other people in the room aren't even paying attention to you enough to judge you. So I would worry less and I would go more.
I think that's great advice. And I think that's not talked enough about. I think you actually try to protect yourself by saying, you don't want to give like fluff advice out there almost, but I think that's perfect. I think most people sit on the sidelines and they wonder why not them, right? And you have to get in the game. One of the things I want to turn around to is investing. With what's going on right now, you have Bitcoin, crypto, you have NFTs that are flying. People are paying ridiculous amount of money for like a pixelated image that I still don't even understand that world. What are your thoughts on investment strategies if you were to start now, right? So you're listening to a listener right now who maybe just started making money and they had to start thinking about investment strategy. What are your thoughts about what's going on right now and what would you do?
So my advice is actually quite simple. No matter where you are on the, on the financial, I guess, hierarchy or scale, you need to find the best people to invest with. Now, where I'm sitting today, I'm in a super fortunate situation. I have access to the best investors in crypto and the best investors in pre-seed venture and the best investors in biotech and pharma and the best in real estate, right? And so I'm generally speaking investing with the best, return investors in their field. But if you're only investing $1,000, then you got to find the best ETF. If you believe in the FANG type stocks, then you can find the best ETF. That's a starting point, all right? Those ETFs have done extraordinarily well over the last 5-10 years. If you want to have some exposure to crypto, then you should find the best crypto ETF. Maybe it's a tracking fund. Maybe you can buy half a coin of Bitcoin, half a coin of Ethereum, half a coin of something else. That seems a bit more complicated than investing in a fund. And now you have these funds and ETFs that allow you to sort of simulate owning the coins, let them own the coins, and you have the liquidity in dollars or whatever currency you're investing in. So I don't advise people to be stock pickers. I think stock picking is a huge, huge mistake. I don't encourage early investors to invest in venture deals unless they can invest in 5 or 6 of them, because all these great venture capital firms, okay, I've got a whole bunch of them. The reason that they're successful for me is because they have 100 investments. Some go to 0, some go to 100x. The average maybe goes to 5-6x, and at the end of the day, I've got a 3.5x return on my invested capital. Cherry picking deals is dangerous. Now it's got huge upside potential. You might pick the 100x company, right? And feel very smart. But I think that finding the right people to invest with at your level of investment, and sadly, money makes money. And as your level goes up, you have access to better investors. Okay, that's number one. And number two is diversity. You may like a deal and you may have $50,000 to invest. I would far prefer seeing someone find 5 deals, invest $10,000 in each one, even if it takes 3 years to find those 5 deals, than to put $50,000 in one venture deal that doesn't yet have revenue or has a small amount of revenue, and take a gamble that it's going to be a 30xer. I don't like investment as gambling. I like investment as a diverse and educated exercise. And if you go with the best people, they have the best chance, if they're diversified in their philosophy and in their allocations, of getting a return on your investment.
I want to switch topics to something and slowly wrap up with this one. Philanthropy is something that's extremely important to you. You're extremely, extremely active. My question, I guess, is, was it something that was always important to you? Because you hear it a lot from people. Yeah, if I had money, I'd be philanthropic too, right? If I had that type of money, I'd give away tons of money and sit on boards and do things because I'm rich. But how do you start becoming philanthropic? And I know the answer that it's not just because you made money. So, but I'll spoiler alert everyone listening to that. But I'd love to hear how that plays a role in your life.
It is in part because I made money. When I was very young, my late father took me to the barber shop on Sundays, and an old man named Mr. Schaefer would walk in with a garbage bag with jockey underwear in the garbage bag. It was obviously packaged underwear. And my father would buy every Sunday a couple of pairs. And I would ask him, like, why are you buying this underwear? You don't need it. I go, no, but he says, no, but if Mr. Schaefer can come in here and sell underwear out of a garbage bag, I'm going to buy some. And that was an act of charity. Okay. That wasn't a charitable organization with a tax receipt. It's an act of humanity and generosity. And that lesson was not lost on me. And then as I made money, I realized that A, I didn't need all the money that I have. B, I enjoy giving it away. I don't miss the money in the account. And so I try to encourage people that we have a civic sort of obligation to take care of the less fortunate, and that they should do that to before the point of pain, meaning don't change your lifestyle, don't sell a car, don't cancel your vacation, don't not buy those sneakers for your kid, but find the point before you would have to do any of those things And that can be your philanthropic threshold, and you will be very generous and feel very good about yourself. So when I did the Centrade campaign, I learned a lot because I would go to the factory floor. Let's take Pratt and Whitney, where they make airplane engines. And I go on the floor and there's maybe 500 floor workers. And I would say to them, you know, what we want from you is to take something off your paycheck. $1 would be fine. What's not really fine is zero. And what I think that maybe some of you have felt was an embarrassment to give $1 because you thought it wasn't enough, but you're not embarrassed to give zero. So what we'd like to get is 100% participation, even if it's at $1, and that will be success for us. So that they're not thinking, well, if I don't give $500 or $200 or $1,000, you know, and I have that same situation with wealthy people. You know, they think that I'm thinking they should be giving $25,000. What I'm thinking is you need to be giving something. Once we get the something, we'll get more over time. And if you have a hard year, we'll get nothing that year. It's all about, you know, capacity, but it's also about feeling good about give. You feel good when you buy that car. Why don't you feel good also feeding people who need, you know, 3 meals a day, and trying to talk to people about the fact that even though they feel that their taxes should be enough to pay for all the hospital care and all the equipment the hospital needs, and should be able to take care of all the homeless people and all the impoverished people, that we live in a great social democratic society here in Quebec and Canada, but it's imperfect. It doesn't have enough money in the system to take care of all those things. And it does require for the more fortunate, who also pay 52% tax, to supplement the government in taking care of the less fortunate. And so I've become, you know, I think a sort of a big advocate for giving, but at all levels: time, small money, and more significant amounts of money.
You know, listening to you talk, you're ahead of me. I'm coming in that direction. I'm coming to join you in that success range. But you have a nice head start on me. So I'm going to ask you a question that I hope to look at in 20 years from now, 20 plus years from now, and think about how you answered and how it affected me, and maybe the listeners too. Father to father, raising kids, right? Running businesses, right? Your time is pulled in a lot of different directions. You talked about philanthropy and lead, and your father showing you by example, and now you're trying to show your kids by example. What advice do you have for the entrepreneur now who has their time divided in so many different areas, right? And want to give their kids those lessons, the lessons of success, the lessons of self-confidence, the lessons of being philanthropic.
Right.
What type of advice do you have?
Well, I know this sounds so cliche when I say lead by example, but I have a choice to make. Now, my kids are 26 and 21, but, okay, my choice is the following. I could be at home right now. I'll tell people that we're recording this at 12:20 p.m. in the afternoon, okay? I could be at home right now in my bathrobe, reading the Wall Street Journal, and I'm in my office at 7:45 a.m. Why? Because that's my work ethic. And my kids have always seen that I had a work ethic. It didn't matter how much money I had a work ethic. I took work seriously. I took waking up, taking a shower, shaving, and looking decent seriously. I take stopping at a homeless person and giving them something that's in my pocket seriously. Now, if they haven't observed all of those things, I don't have to say a thing to them. If they haven't observed all of those things, then they weren't paying attention. And I hope, and now that they're older, I do see that some of those things that my wife and I have just done have been absorbed by them, and they have their own personalities, which make them even better people and more generous people than some of the things that I or my wife have done. So having conversations is hugely important. There's no doubt, but you got to be the person that is giving those examples, because kids look up to their parents, even if they yell at their parents, even if they roll their eyes at their parents, even if their parents are from the old school. You know, my kids, when they think that I'm missing the point, they go, "Okay, boomer," yeah, okay, I know I'm a boomer. What can I do about it? But kids do, and kids, I'm talking 26 and 21 now. So kids from 0 to 26, that's my experience so far. They do want to follow good example. And so provide good example.
How do you stay up to date on trends that are going on? What do you read or watch?
First of all, my kids and yours, they won't know what the world without internet is. The internet is a joke. I mean, it's an absolute joke for people who grew up without one. Everything I want to know, I can know within a minute. I want to know what M&A transactions took place in tech. Okay, so I get the information sent to me every day. I get the top 10 stories in the Wall Street Journal in my inbox every morning at 6 a.m. I have Forbes lists sent to me every day at 5 p.m. I have Google alerts on all the companies that I'm interested in. So honestly, you can know whatever it is that you want to know. All you need to do is spend 5 minutes subscribing and getting the alerts, and it's fed to you. Whereas when I was growing up, I didn't know anything. There was no one to ask. I had no access to any information whatsoever.
Encyclopedia Britannica. You have to go and read those.
I had the World Book Encyclopedia. So use this incredible thing. It's sitting in your hand. All the world, that Seattle Kraken screensaver, all the information in the world is sitting in this thing. That is the most amazing thing that's happened in my lifetime. And I don't care what happens between now and the time that I die, this will still be the most amazing thing, that all the world's information is sitting in this little device that I hold in my hand all the time that I'm not sleeping.
Final question. In life, they say, have no regrets. In business, I think anyone who says they have no regrets is lying to me. So what's one thing you regret the most from a business standpoint?
I don't regret it, but I traveled a lot for business. I was away a lot, but I don't regret it. It's easy to look back now. I feel that I gave my sons the most that I could give. I feel that I gave my wife the most that I could give. But so it's not a regret, it's a reality. Today, balance is way better understood than when I started working, and way better understood than when my parents started working. So they had no balance. So in my parents' generation, there were no gyms that you went to. No one did yoga. No one ate healthy. We didn't take family vacation other than we went to Florida, at Christmas time. My grandparents paid for us to come and visit them. So I would say I don't have regret, but I understand balance over time. And now today's young people, they really want balance. They want to work remotely, and I'm okay with that. They want time off. They don't want to be married to their job where everything is work, work, work. So while I don't regret it, there are some parts of being 20 today that I would appreciate more than I was able to when I was in my 20s and 30s, just working and digging and scratching and clawing. And today I think that the young people have a bit more of a balanced view of the world.
Lopsided balanced view of the world, but yes.
Maybe it's a bit lopsided view of the world.
I appreciate that answer. Mitch, thank you so much for doing this. For the listeners who want to learn more, want to find out about you, maybe want to just follow you on your journey or even reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm Mitch Garber everywhere. Twitter, Wikipedia, Instagram, and I'm quite active on Twitter.
TikTok? Are you on TikTok yet?
Yeah, but I don't post TikToks, but I'm on TikTok. I watch a lot of TikTok. You can follow me anywhere, and I'd love for you to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate your time.
Jason, thanks so much.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want, check out our most recent video over here. And this one is the one YouTube thinks you'll like. But if you really enjoyed watching, please do me a favor, like and subscribe over here. Thank you so much.